Sound of waves felt like music when Vian pulled out her mobile from her bag and plugged her AirPod into her ears. She smiled when she heard the music which was created by her. Vian heaved a deep breath and started to sing along with the music. Didn't care about the world when the cold breeze giving her calm environment. The coolness made her shiver as it hit her skin. This is what Vian needed right now, a moment to herself. It was the perfect time to let go from reality, to live in a little bubble of freedom. She closed her eyes when she heard a familiar voice calling for her. Vian looked at the person. It was none other than her little brother. Vian said as soon as she put her phone back to her pocket and ran towards him. Jungkook smiled proudly. He was the one of the famous and successful singer in his agency. He was always on stage performing and never once took a break. When he performed, everyone around him would be amazed that someone could such an amazing voice while being so young. Of course, that didn't mean they wouldn't get jealous though. They all wanted to be on the same level as him. Jungkook was aware of this and didn't care to give anyone that satisfaction. Even if sometimes the audience would cheer too loud when he did well or even scream because he did good. Jungkook sat and looked at the manager who nodded his head in agreement. Jungkook smiled knowing that he succeeded in pissing off most of the people in this industry. His manager asked. Manager smiled. Jungkook explained and shrugged casually, not wanting to admit something he knew was wrong. Jungkook had been avoiding writing songs because of the negative attention he received in the past. His manager asked and Jungkook sighed and rubbed his forehead, feeling tired after all the activities that morning. Jungkook said as he was the king and everything was gonna as he wanted. Jungkook just chuckled and waved off his manager's concern. His manager sighed at his word and nodded his head before exiting. Wine smiled while looking at the design in front of her. She mumbled and looked back at the piece of artwork. After that, she went back to sketching something else. Vian said as her boss entered the place with a small smile. Miss Kim sat and handed her a folder with two files. Miss Kim said, looking at her in hopes. Miss Kim trusts Vian to handle everything in such a stressful job. Vian nodded and gave her a smile. Miss Kim smiled. Vian sat and smiled at Minji again. It had been a year since their first meeting. They became friends almost immediately. Minji was like a sister to Vian, although she wasn't related to her parents. Vian waved back as Miss Kim left and got to work. Jungkook roared, looking at his manager, who was looking down on the floor. Jungkook asked again, raising his eyebrow. His manager just shook his head, trying to avoid making eye contact with Jungkook. Jungkook gritted his teeth and slammed his fist on the table as he stared at his manager instantly. He asked in rage. Jungkook huffed and threw himself over his chair, crossing his arms and glared out of the window angrily. Sudden knock on the door made two men look away from each other and at the door. Jungkook yelled soon YN entered the office while holding the pile of files. She bowed at Jungkook in respect. YN apologized while placed the file on the table. Jungkook was turned to speak. He was lost in her beauty. She was wearing a beautiful white one-piece dress. Her mole upper on her upper lip caught his attention, the most of her brown hair tied into a ponytail. Her long legs were accentuated by a pair of high heels. She was truly breathtakingly gorgeous. Jungkook buttered out and blushed, slightly embarrassed at what he said. Ryan laughed softly, kissing Jungkook's ears and cheeks to run redder. He cleared his throat awkwardly and gestured her to sit down. He asked, making her look at him. She answered, looking down. Jungkook nodded in gratitude. She smiled, making him smile too. Jungkook sat and looked at her again. She smiled and got up. She bowed at him and walked out of the office. Jungkook's heart skipped several beats when he saw her walking away. He whispered and shook his head slightly as if to get rid of his thoughts. Jungkook thought to himself and clenched his fist before turning back to his paper.